Amber, I'm really excited to welcome you and just deep dive into all things intuition and exploring your spiritual gifts. And yeah, just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat again.
Yeah, I am as well. We were just talking for a moment before we started recording about what a potent time it is to be on this planet. And I feel like more and more are perhaps getting the call to lean in, to trust their intuition, to perhaps open up and expand and ignite more of their spiritual gifts. And, you've been walking this path for a while. And I'm so curious to know, like from your perspective, you chose to incarnate to a family of intuitives, or perhaps those that are more embracing of those gifts. So what was that like for you?
It was very much fun. Never a dull moment. um, since I was very young, I've had a deep connection to the fairy realm. And I think having parents that were very open about energy and discussing, oops, sorry. Oh no, did I lose you? Are we good?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Having parents that were very open to discussing and exploring energy beings really played on that fairy realm magic and curiosity and wonder. And I feel like coincidentally, when I was a kid, I went through a lot of trauma where I felt like my innocence was really ripped away from me. And my connection to the fairy realm that's persisted throughout my whole life is ultimately it's like a full circle moment, where you start so tuned in and then you feel so disconnected and scared, but it's through those connections of beings that we can't see physically that start to really support our healing journey and our journey back to ourselves, which has then brought me back into this place of like always living through my inner child. I feel like that's something that was really ingrained in me as a kid and has just always it's just a part of who I am at this point, you know? But it was so much fun. I've always had a lot of, I guess, confidence or my dad's very much a black sheep. He had a stroke when he was 7. He has a twin brother, and following his stroke, he was in a coma for a few weeks, I think. During that time, he has a full recollection of essentially passing over and talking to this, like, big sun, godlike energy, just basically saying, like, "I'm not ready to go yet. I have work I need to do here," and trying to renegotiate essentially his time of passing. So he came back. He had to learn how to walk again, how to eat, how to speak. And because he had a twin brother, his twin brother, continued life as normal. And my dad ended up having to be held back in school. And his left side of his body was affected where it's like shorter and skinnier than his right side due to the stroke. It affected his physical body's development. So he limps and he just would look different. So he was made fun of a lot. And I think having a dad, especially that went through something so intense, who like physically just looks different than other people, gave me the confidence really early to be different. That's okay. That's fine. That's our strength. And in school, I would teach my friends about fairies, about angels. We would do like seances at sleepovers. I did a whole what's it called? A whole like presentation in my elementary school about fairies and how to connect with them and who they are. It's always been a very deep part of who I am, and it's just made things so fun.
Oh my gosh, I love hearing your story. There are so many questions, curiosity, as you're sharing, because I feel like one of the things that perhaps parents, can often do just inadvertently is desire for their child to fit in so that they won't be made fun of or bullied or all of these things. Whereas, like, perhaps the opposite of that is really encouraging this authentic expression. And it's awesome to be, your own unique light, and that's who you're here to be. And it sounds like that was very much the environment you were raised in. And so did you experience like bullying from perhaps being different, and like what was your childhood like?
So, gosh, I went through a period, I would say in middle school, so about like 12, 13, 11 to 13, that was very difficult. I had a hard time fitting in. And that period, I was very disconnected from who I am. That's when my PTSD started to seep in. So there was just so much chaos from so many different angles. My parents had just gotten divorced. Our cat, who was like this beautiful little guardian for me, had just passed away. It was just a bunch of stuff. When I was in elementary school, so prior to that, I danced a lot. Dance has always been a big part of my life as well, and I think that's what really gave me confidence to be me, because it's so vulnerable, performing and just I don't know, you're just putting on a show for everybody, and I loved it, and it made me lean into, I guess, myself more and, like, my unique artistic lens. After a bunch of stuff started to happen, I stopped dancing,
Mm,
just due to the circumstances at home. I wasn't able to dance anymore, and dance has always been such a, like, mental health savior for me, so I think I didn't have access to a big outlet of mine. I had just moved to a new school, so I was getting acclimated to, the new environment and everything, and during that period, I guess it became more of a focus on trying to fit in or, like, mimic other people, I guess, because I just had no understanding of who I am, what I like. I'm also a big empath and I was a big people pleaser, so it was like everything just felt like a reflection of everybody else,
mm,
which felt very uncomfortable. I met, one of she became my best friend for a very long time in 8th grade, and she was also very different, very unique, very artsy. And our friendship, I feel like, ultimately started to give me confidence to begin exploring myself again and reconnecting to who I am. In high school, I moved to a different high school, so it was coincidentally back to my like elementary school friends. And at that school, people were just a little bit meaner, and because I had been disconnected for so long and I've just gone through so much, I felt so awkward, and I spent many, like, lunch times just in a bathroom stall by myself because I just didn't feel like I could connect to anybody. I felt very awkward. Some of those kids were assholes, it just happens. Um, and I decided that I felt like it would be in my best interest to pursue a like online homeschooling program. So I spoke to my parents about it because it would have given me the opportunity. I was pursuing acting at the time, so it would have given me the opportunity to lean into my art more. I'm very like independent. I'm an only child. I work very well by myself. I'm very motivated. So there were just so much positives that could have come from that. So we ultimately decided to go that route. And I feel like having so much time by myself to kind of become, I don't know, who I am and just have the space to feel that. And even with the homeschooling program, it was a lot of kids that were also pursuing acting. So everybody's very artsy. They're all kind of unique and weird in their own way. And it just felt like it was more people that I could actually resonate with that were interested in things that I was interested in instead of like, I don't know, just normal kid things because I always had my interests elsewhere. So at that period, I kind of started to unpack my limitations, what I felt were my limitations. I really started to confront my PTSD and the triggers I had because I didn't like feeling held back by them, and it turned into this whole journey of self discovery. I ended up moving out when I was about 16. So I started my journey into adulthood fairly early. And yeah, that was that.
Hmm. Wow. Such a, fascinating and courageous story. And, the word that comes through is around sovereignty, and just the sovereignty of like being in your own energy at that time, I feel like would be such a benefit in many ways, just because, like you mentioned, it's like during this time, we're often like figuring it all out, and we're seeing how like the myriad of the world mirrors and reflects certain aspects of ourselves to further know ourselves. And it can be just such a confusing time. And what a blessing and a gift to really know the things that like lit you up at such an early age, and to be able to like pour into those and to nurture them and to further explore them. And then I guess like I'm just curious, like with because you are, making a living and um, sharing your gifts in a way that is so heart led and soul led. And has that like been a part of your path from, that time on at 16 where you're like leaning into your gifts, and how has that unfolded for you?
So, kind of going back to the people pleaser thing, that's something that took the longest to detach from. My family comes from education, IT, engineering, it's all very education focused. And after I moved out, I fell back into dance and I found such a deep love for it. It just reawakened all of the passion. And I really wanted to spend my time split between dance and pursuing spiritual work. But because my family prioritizes education so much, there was this tug of war almost within me where I wanted to appease them. I have abandonment issues, so it was like if I don't appease them, then they're gonna not like me. I'm gonna be here by myself, blah blah blah, XYZ. Oh my god, just dramatize it so intensely. So my way around that was to go to school for dance. But the whole time I was going to school, I was taking my time because I really wanted to absorb everything I was learning. And on the side, I was awarded this scholarship program at a dance studio that essentially kind of paves your way to a professional pursuit of dance. And during that time, it became more and more clear that I don't feel like I need to move forward with education. I think I just need to focus on my training and doing this work.
Mm.
I ended up finding this school program many, many years later. I feel like it took me like, gosh, like 10 years probably to go from starting school to getting my bachelor's. I really took my time with it because I was like, I'm not going to prioritize this. I have other interests and my energy is needed elsewhere. But I found this program that was specifically designed for professional dancers. And the goal of the program is to essentially use your professional experience to help expedite your time at school. It's kind of used for credits. But they prioritize creating an identity outside of dance. So you start to learn how to really think critically, how to really explore different topics, how to think deeply, how to discuss, I don't know, whatever. It was so beneficial in just shaping my view of the world and how to even begin unpacking that.
Mm.
So I felt it was very important to finish that program, even though I guess the priority I had on schooling was kind of put on the back burner. It just felt like what I got out of that program was so important. So I continued. So it was, I guess, more of like a heart led pursuit rather than feeling like I needed to conform. But nonetheless, throughout the whole journey, it's like I always have known what I needed to focus on. And it was really more about persuading my brain to chill out and trust that and understand that we know where we need to go and everybody else can chill out and they're still going to love me anyways and it's okay, you know.
Yes, that in a nutshell, you just summarized the journey of trusting one's intuition. Like I love that, right? Because there's so many there's the logical or the mind that comes in, and the intuition, I feel like, at least in my perspective, my experience is more of a whisper. It's more of that like softer, gentle voice that you have to like lean in and cultivate that. devotion with, that deep listening. And so I'd love if you could just expand on that, because I know it's something that you teach and you really explore in your work, is like, how does one cultivate an even deeper relationship with their intuition?
It really takes practice, I think, especially when our view of the world is one based on survival. It's so difficult sometimes to take what we feel is a risk, and it's kind of silly because when you think about it, if your heart is screaming something, of course it's not a risk. That's the safest decision you can make, but we have to kind of train our nervous system to understand that that is the truth and that it is safe for us. And we don't have to follow the norm just because we've done it so many times. I say this analogy all the time. For a lot of people, they feel like playing it small and working, I don't know, at a corporate job or something is the safest option rather than pursuing their dreams. But when you really think about it, something can happen. The business can go under, there could be big layoffs. Nothing is really safer than the other. They're just as risky or just as safe as each other. It's really all about how you approach it and what you put into it and how you show up. We are in control of our paths, and sometimes it takes practice to begin shifting your thinking to, allowing things that have been feeling out of reach or a little scary to deem them as safe. But it really just takes baby steps. When you feel a little nudge, listen to it. Even if it's like if you're walking down the street and there's a new restaurant and it's food that you've never tried before and it seems a little funky, if you're curious about it, fuck it. Let's try it, And the more that you embrace curiosity, the more that you embrace like adventure, it makes it so much easier. There's less pressure. It's like, oh, if I like it, great. If I don't like it, who cares? It's a little bit more spontaneous, which feels really exciting. So there's a lot less resistance. And the more that we have these specific examples where we listen to our intuition or listen to that little pull or that little nudge and something really cool happened, it becomes an exciting thing that we're excited to dive into more. And part of that process too is giving yourself time to just be with yourself. I really love evening walks. I love walking. Walking is one of my favorite things in the world. But just even like walking around the block, giving yourself 5 minutes to just be quiet and be with yourself, thinking, exploring, looking at stuff, whatever it is, just allowing your brain to wander starts to allow you the opportunity to see what's there, see what you're curious about, see what you're interested in, maybe something you're craving. Because when we get really busy and just like tuned in and have this to do list and blah, 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 got to do this and that and this and that, there's so much noise that we don't even have access to what we may be curious about. So finding those moments to just rest are so important. And for some people that are very busy, it could even be when you park your car, if you're going to the grocery store, take 2 minutes just sitting in your car before you get out and do the next task, little things.
Yeah, so much there. I feel like just the stillness, the spaciousness are those moments where you can hear, you can lean in, you can actually co create. Like in my experience, it's like asking the divine God source, my higher self, to speak with me, like speak to me, like wanting to deepen in that relationship and that knowing. And that for me has been like the breadcrumbs or the seeds that have grown into like a deeper relationship, into a deeper knowing. And so I love that you share that, because it starts out as a small perhaps curiosity of like, how can I lean in and how can I trust my intuition, my inner knowing even more deeply. And something that like you mentioned also was about playing it small. That like was like a ping and then really deeply resonated, because it's so easy when we feel like we have to have it all figured out. We have to like rely on our logic to in fact play it small. Because that just becomes like an ingrained pattern of like really not challenging one's self to step outside the box and to know what is truly possible. So I'd love if you could speak more into that a little bit more about like playing full out and what that looks like in your experience.
Sure. Yeah. Again, so many of us are operating in fear or through survival. And I feel like that's even expressed in the way things are advertised to us. It's like, if you don't buy this, then oh my gosh, this is going to happen. Or, oh, this is toxic, 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 blah, blah, blah. It's just, there's like so much chaos where it's like, is there anything good for us? Because, we're constantly being bombarded with fear in order to force us to rely on certain things outside of ourselves. And kind of going back to the money thing, there's so many families that have consistently played it small and are stuck in almost like this lack state of mind. And it's so interesting because it's almost like a catch 22 where they don't like it. It doesn't feel good, but they're also not willing to break out of the confines because that's new territory and that feels scary. So at least if I'm hustling and working like 20 hours a day and feeling exhausted and barely making anything, at least I feel like I'm doing something, rather than actually perhaps reconsidering what work they want to pursue, or just current circumstances, certain decisions. um with my grandparents, kind of going back to the education thing, for example, that is where their generation was told you get success from, or that's how you create like a successful life for yourself. You have to go to school, you have to go to school, you have to go to school. So if they've been ingrained with that repetitive mantra in a way, they're just going to be repeating it for those that they love, because they just want those that they love to also have some sort of success, because that's just what they've been sold. And I think what's important to understand is, again, you can reach anything you want through an infinite amount of ways. There is not ever a one size fits all. There are so many ways to get to where we're going. So many big success stories we hear. It's like this like random crazy journey of like doing this and then dropping out of school and going over here and then it's always this like very interesting spontaneous exploration that ultimately provides success. Granted, there are also stories that kind of play by the book, but that's just further confirming that there are many ways to get from point A to point B, that don't follow the book. And I think allowing yourself to consistently, I guess, reflect upon whether what you're pursuing feels good to you, like if it actually is fulfilling and makes your body come to life, or if perhaps it's just appeasing somebody else. If you're pursuing something that's just pleasing somebody else, there's a lack of passion. It feels very empty. It feels very heavy. It's just there's so much that our head may make a lot bigger and make a lot more difficult because it really just does not want to do it. When we're pursuing something that feels very exciting for us, we hit a flow state. It's very easeful. Opportunities open for us, because that's the route we're meant to take. And I think one important thing to consider is kind of going to the concept of life purpose. A lot of people think a life purpose means a specific type of job, when that's not it. Our life purpose is how we show up and like the energy that we bring to things. And you can really tune into that in any way. If you've been in a career that you've been pursuing for like 40 years and you really don't want to go through the whole chaos of switching gears, reconsider how you're showing up to this job. If you are meant to talk to people and, I don't know, connect to them on a deep level, which is going to initiate some sort of healing, then be very present in your work relationships or customers that you speak to,
Yeah.
find ways to really come alive in your current circumstances. And naturally, when you're already tuning into that energy, this little breadcrumb trail is going to start to open up, that's going to pull you into even more alignment. Perhaps an opportunity comes up in a different career or something, you know, that works perfectly. Or maybe you're meant to stay there and add more light and love to something that's feeling a little icky for everybody, you know. But the first step is to really just consider what makes you feel alive and how you can start hitting that right now. The universe operates on like attracts like. So the more that you can feel that now and feel free now and feel passionate now, you're just going to keep pulling that over to you.
Mhm. So good. I mean, I love just the focus on how we're feeling in our energy because sometimes we're like, well, if I move here, if I, explore this title, and it's really like, how do I want to feel in this experience, And with that, like maybe you don't even know what your big dream or vision is, but focusing on how you want to feel, like how you want to feel in that expanded state of energy, like you said, like having all these synchronicities or like, magical moments or feeling in that flow state or feeling alive or feeling that magnetism. It's like focusing on that energetic state of being really can help one magnetize whatever it is that they're really wanting to cultivate and create in their life. So I love that. And I want to just go from there into like timeline manifestation because I know this is a big area that you focus on in your work. And like, likely if you're listening to the show, you've heard quite a bit about jumping timelines and manifesting and calling in your highest timeline and what for whatever that applies in whichever area or all areas of life that you're really focused on expanding. But I'd love if you could just maybe break down some of the ways that we can really begin to quantum jump timelines.
Absolutely. I love this topic. So it's really, again, focusing on how you're feeling, what you're embodying. A lot of times, just starting with a simple reflection about how exactly you want to be feeling. I like to focus more on, like, I guess, seeds of intention rather than specifics, because a lot of times the universe has a plan for us far greater than we can even consider, you know? So I like to focus more on something like, I want to feel successful, abundant, at peace. I want to feel loved, whatever, just some nice like seeds. And you can begin conceptualizing perhaps what those seeds would look like. But the focus is on how it feels in your body. How does success feel in your body? How does love feel in your body? Peace, just completely feeling that flow of experience through your body. From there, after kind of having some sort of idea of what it is you want to call in, you want to begin living through that as much as possible. So, some things that I usually like to recommend people are one, to change their house, move things around, you know, add some new decor. If there's an area in your home that feels kind of like sad and dull, or you just don't really resonate with it, change it. Our environment is a reflection of us, you know, and when it's constantly kind of pulsing these deeper intentions or feelings at us, we align with them a lot easier. So redecorating, moving things around, it also kind of changes the way that we navigate through our space, which begins to allow our brain to feel more open to changing habits and changing behaviors. You know, it's the simplest things. At one point, I have very short nails, and at one point, I started wearing a lot of like long press ons because it just changes how I engage with things. I have to really go slow and, like, you know, there are just certain things that aren't as easy as they used to be. But even that just makes me look at things differently. The way that I look at a coin on a table is going to be very different than if I've got long nails. You know, it's kind of more of like a, a challenge of sorts. But all of those little things change the way that we engage with our environment. We start questioning things. We're a lot more aware of the little nuances and how we show up within those nuances. I also recommend people consider changing their wardrobe. Go through your wardrobe. What aligns with those feelings that you want to embody? If you've got a frumpy sweater on that you don't like wearing or you don't feel great in, but maybe it's comfortable, maybe let's switch things up. Let's get a little uncomfortable. Let's wear some patterns. Let's wear some colors. If you want to be seen and feel like this light in the world, let's do it, you know? And you can start small with like a little ribbon in your hair, or maybe if you don't usually wear earrings or you don't usually wear lipstick, like let's just try it, you know, start becoming comfortable with that. And again, it's just baby steps, slowly changing things, slowly becoming a little bit more experimental. The way that people engage with you is going to be different. You're going to start to realize that nobody really cares if you just wear like bright pink head to toe. You know, everybody's like the main character of their own story. So you're free to just express yourself however you want. And it helps our confidence and it helps us begin to take action in alignment with what we're calling in because we don't feel so like pushed into a corner. We don't feel so small anymore. We feel like we have permission to be loud and be us. And we're starting to really feel the identity of that version of us that has everything that we're looking to call in. And just as easily as it is to think about and brainstorm who that is, we just naturally become that, you know? And with that come opportunities. Again, like attracts like, it's all based on us. Every single option there is in the universe is available to us. The universe is constantly expanding. There are an infinite number of parallel lifetimes where literally everything you want is playing out in all sorts of different ways. So, whatever you feel like you want, and whichever way you want that to happen, there is a lifetime in which that is happening. So, just allow yourself to become them, dress as them, walk as them, cook as them, make decisions as them, and there it is.
Yeah, I love that, and it's so funny because I literally yesterday cleaned out got rid of bags and bags of clothing to donate, and it feels so good and so freeing. And, you know, it really is those little decisions of like, what am I going to put on my body today? How is my like outer environment, my home reflecting my inner state of being, my energy? What am I eating? How am I feeding myself? How am I taking care of my body? It's like, how do you become that main character energy that you're desiring to embody? Really appreciating the character, the avatar that you came here to be. So I love that.
Absolutely. And it even goes to small things like your daily rituals. If you usually wake up, eat, brush your teeth, and run, or sometimes you forget to brush your teeth, like if that version of you that you're trying to align with is one that really takes care of themselves, they have a really nice balance with like work and life and stuff like that, chances are they'll probably have a much more mindful like morning ritual that they partake in, so let's incorporate that now, you know, even if it's small, even if it's like, okay, I'm just gonna read literally one page of a book and that's it, and then I'm gonna brush my teeth and have a cup of tea and then leave, you know. It could be very very small, but just those little changes start to change the way that we feel. It's so simple, yet sometimes so difficult at the same time because our brain doesn't want to prioritize it. Our brain is like, no, but we're doing this and this is what we've always done. Why are we changing it? You know, but the more that you can kind of separate yourself from your brain and remind your brain that, look, we're telling a new story now. So the norm that's been going on is changing. It's just going to change. You know, if you try to guilt me, I'm not listening. We're not playing that game right now. I've got a bigger mission to undertake, you know? We're trying something new and it just takes consistency.
Yeah, and I'm hearing just the voices of perhaps like, but Amber, like I've tried it before. I'm stuck in this pattern, and I don't feel that shift of jumping timelines. Like I feel like I'm in this loop of like repetitiveness, and even if I've tried like the small shifts, like what recommendation would you have, or what guidance?
Sometimes the practice that we are most reluctant to try is the one we need the most. And especially when we feel stuck and we've been trying all of these things, a lot of times we're trying the things that seem most convenient to us or the easiest, or it's usually still, I guess, kind of in the bubble of our old identity, and really considering kind of going back to this, like, if I'm aligning to somebody that has a really great work life balance, like they're just a powerhouse, magnetic, whatever it is. And right now, I'm just feeling like stuck in the hustle, like I'm stressed out, you know? I take 5 minutes to meditate. I do this, I do that, I do this, but I'm just so tired still. Maybe the thing that scares me the most would be to quit my job or to ask for vacation time or to go to the spa. Maybe something about those things like kind of triggers something in a way that's like, ugh, gross. No, never, you know? And if something that we're essentially needing but very reluctant to partake in creates a very intense negative emotional response, it's triggering something. It's
Mhm.
triggering something that is unhealed and needs our attention. So, great. Let's get into the uncomfortable and try it out, you know, even if it's small, even if it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna, if the spa feels really uncomfortable and every time I think about it, my brain is like, oh, we've got more things to do. This is gross. Just start small. I'm gonna get a pedicure. I'm gonna get a pedicure. It's gonna be great. We'll get an ice cream after just to reward ourselves. It'll be fine, you know? And then you go and it's fine. And a lot of times, those are the things that we really need to nourish our soul in order to gain the clarity to actually understand what we need to do to step into the timeline we need.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good because actually the thing that was popping up as you were describing that was like around visibility, and say you want to really manifest that timeline of like sharing your gifts, sharing your spiritual gifts and yet there's such a block around being visible and showing up whether it's on social media or like putting out a video or doing something like this. It's like, yes, that thing.
That's the
Yes.
one.
Follow that thread because there's so much gold in that resistance and, in the healing of like why is that triggering to be visible, going deeper into that. And, not only is it the thread that helps you in the cultivation, but it's that remembrance, it's the healing that's ignited from further exploring and reclaiming that aspect, whatever it is of you that's being invited to um, be looked at, to be witnessed. So,
Yeah, it is so empowering to feel uncomfortable and do it anyway, you
mhm.
know, because once we do it anyway, it's in alignment. Nothing bad is going to happen. Nothing bad happens. If anything, we just get really good feedback, you know?
Yeah, and that is the thing that is an edge I find, or like at least in my personal journey around trusting, because it's like, but really something bad might happen. Like there is that what if or that voice of perhaps trepidation. And like the more you learn to lean in and trust, and this is in my experience, the deeper you are able to really realize your own potential and to deepen that relationship with yourself. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, to help well, couldn't kind of going deeper in there to help cope with that discomfort too. Sometimes it helps to have like a side mission where going back to visibility, if you need to get your face out there in order to really kind of align with that new identity, but there's a lot of resistance there, you can do something where if you take action, if you go live on Instagram, for example, get yourself a little treat after, or use that discomfort and fuel a painting, like use it as inspiration to create something with, you know, or you can even call a friend and be like, okay, I need some support. I'm going to do this and I need you to make sure I do it. Just
Yeah.
keep texting me or do it with me. You
Yeah.
know, maybe let's go on live together, whatever it is. There are so many there are so many options for us to gain support and make it more comfortable, you know, and if it's too hard for us to just like go in like raw dog, it's okay. There are things we can do to help support ourselves on the way. And it really just takes us just saying yes and saying screw it. And I think that's also where curiosity is very helpful because it really forces confrontation without us feeling at the mercy of anything. Where if I'm going live on Instagram and I'm super anxious about it, what if I I don't know, what if I actually like it? Or what if I have a really good conversation with somebody? Or like, ooh, this is interesting. Where am I feeling this discomfort in my body? What if I talk about it? That might be cool. What if it resonates with somebody? What if I put somebody on the spot and ask them to join the live without them being prepared for it? Like, let's just play. you know, it makes it a lot more fun and exciting. I think one thing that dance has really taught me is everybody we all feel things, and we all feel very similar things during similar times, you know? So if you're feeling nervous about to go live, most people have a little rush of anxiety before they go live. You're not the only person to ever feel that and ever have to confront that. And I think instead of trying to hide that and shove it down and like present yourself as this very confident person, be honest. Hey, I'm a little nervous. This is my first time doing this, and I'm not really sure where this is gonna go. So if you guys want to help me out, that'd be great. You know?
Yeah, so true. I mean, if I've learned one thing about dissolving ego, it's just that, the common themes of how it shows up for each of us, that it's like, oh, but I thought my unworthiness pattern was unique. Like I thought I was so so special in that. And it's like, oh no, like, this is how ego shows up for us all, in each and unique but repetitive themes until it doesn't any longer. And so I love that. Um yeah, something you said about emotions and energy, I wanted to kind of circle back to because, you know, you mentioned that you're a Cancer sun and of course have, intuitive sensitivity as we all do. We're entering a time and space where I feel like the sensitivity of every being on the planet is rising and um just tips that you have or ways of managing or working with that sensitivity.
Oh man. I feel everything all the time. I feel so much. And I think I feel like the biggest lesson I've learned in overcoming it or not feeling at the mercy of my emotions is to simply allow them to be seen, allow them to be part of who I am, not have them something that I hide or, it's kind of like if okay, kind of going with that because I feel a lot of things to a very deep degree. I get very excited even with talking, that sometimes I'll stumble and instead of feeling like nervous about that, it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna like keep rolling with it. I trained myself and I'm not sure I'm not sure if this is a good or bad thing, but just something that's kind of helped me I guess reclaim that is if I start stumbling and I just can't get the words out, then I'll just go blah, blah, blah. It's like, let's just reset my mouth. It wants to make a crazy noise. Let's just blah, 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 start over, and it just helps me feel, I don't know, not shy about it. It's just a normal thing. We all have mouths that get tongue twisted. Who cares?
Mhm.
Another thing is creating with my emotions. I was doing a session for someone a couple weeks ago and their guides had this beautiful idea of when they were crying or if they felt they needed to cry to get watercolor and like use their tears to paint with, which I thought was so cool. So creating with your emotions. If you feel angry or frustrated, what do you want to do with it? Use it as fuel. Maybe I want to exercise. Maybe I want to really channel that into something that I've been a little scared of diving into, like going on Instagram Live or whatever it is, If I'm feeling sad, maybe this is an opportunity for me to put on a cozy movie, make some hot chocolate, take a bath, whatever it is, If it just wants me to chill out, then great, let's chill out. Let's collaborate. Let's play, you know? I think having some sort of outlet or approaching emotions more as a active collaborator is kind of what allows me to constantly feel in control of them, or like one step ahead of them in a way, so I don't shut down. I feel like in certain scenarios where we may feel very vulnerable, like in a really heated meeting or something like that, having a small outlet, even like wiggling your fingers or wiggling your toes or changing how you're sitting, rolling your neck, just having some sort of like physical outlet, doodling, just something. So it's not in our body also allows us to like constantly push it out. So we're not just stewing in it, you know?
Yeah, there you offered such good medicine there for working with, and I feel like honoring our emotions. Sometimes there can be a tendency to say like this emotion at this time is good, and all other emotions are an inconvenience, or but to really recognize, honor, appreciate, witness, work with, move with, dance with, all emotions allows like the fullness of our experience, and allows those emotions to move through in such a more fluid way. So I love that.
They're like colors in a painting, essentially. They just are. And how we choose to express them or explore them or what we choose to mix them with is completely up to us, And I feel like this is where a lot of like my fairy energy comes out, where if you're in an environment where it's not okay to cry, okay, great. Then I'm definitely crying here. Because there's obviously a block, and I will happily shake things up and make people uncomfortable just to begin setting a new normal. There's this podcast I was listening to years ago that was on the power of negotiation or the art of negotiation, and he was a professor of psychology, I think, and he was saying how the first day of class he gives his students this assignment to get 10 no's. So go out in public, ask people for something, and try to get a no. It could be like, I go to a coffee shop and I'm like, hey, can you just give me a free coffee today? Or I don't know, asking somebody to get something out of a vending machine for you or do some like sort of weird task. And he was saying it's so much harder to get a no than you would realize because people don't want to stir things up. They want to seem agreeable. They want to conform to just this like silent language of being a human and following the rules and not being aggressive. And when we start to allow ourselves to come out of this bubble of social norms and start to play with things a little bit and notice how much other people play it small or not, like everybody's just stressed about how they're feeling. They don't want to be the bad guy. And if you can kind of use that to your advantage to be like, okay, if everybody's feeling nervous and anxious and self-conscious right now, then I'll be the one to kind of take a step or to step up and push us into a new direction, or, it'll be the oddball.
Yeah, going full circle to the beginning of this conversation, I feel like your dad was such a way sharer for you of like being the black sheep, not having to fit in, which is such amazing medicine, and expanding all of us, I feel like, into this age of Aquarius where we're all meant to be unique in our own way, in our own light, and share our gifts. And so, yeah, what a great way to kind of end this conversation of like just the invitation to do something different, than the status quo, and follow what your soul is guiding you to be and to express, because like yeah, we're all meant to share in our own unique way. And I feel like fairy energy definitely is an invitation of that as well.
100%. Yeah. They've been my greatest teachers because they're mischievous. So it's like if things need to get stirred up and nobody's stirring it up, then it's like, okay, well, I will gladly dive into the chaos. Let's go. you know? And it's so interesting too, because I feel like we're so We're so afraid of so much, but when we really think about people that we look up to, they are so transparent or like, I don't know, just open about who they are in a way that's not full of any shame. It's just this beautiful embracing of their soul. And it's as easy as that. When we make little choices that seem very scary, we're actually, it kind of goes back to the timeline hopping stuff. We're actually embracing the most aligned version of us. And when we think about those people, we look up to them. They're wonderful people. So why are we scared? If we take that action and act in alignment with them, other people are going to feel the same. We're giving other people permission to also step into their power, into their light, which is so exciting.
There is truly nothing more magnetic than being in your full authenticity. So I absolutely love that. I love this conversation, Amber. I'm so grateful for you for sharing your unique gifts and insight and um, fairy wisdom. And yeah, it's just been so much fun. I would love if you could share some of the ways that you work with clients and how people can connect with you if they're wanting to go deeper.
Absolutely. Yes, this is so much fun. And I'm glad the conversation went this way because I feel like this is an important important conversation to have. But yeah, so I do psychic medium readings, I do house cleansings, I do psychic training, which is my favorite. What else? I think that about encompasses it. But you can learn more about me at channelwithamber.com. I also have a monthly alignment subscription, which is meant to basically help people with everything that we talked about today. Tune into your intuition, have the confidence to really step into the life and identity that you have always wanted to step into, but feel a little bit reluctant to. It's a beautiful community of so many wonderful people that are right there with you. We're all supporting each other. It's full of a bunch of videos and healings and meditations and trainings and all that good stuff, which you can also find at channelwithamber.com. I think that's about all. I'm always so bad at this part. I'm not-
That was good. That was very thorough. And we will absolutely link to all of those in the show notes so that anybody can get connected with you. Thank you so much, Amber, for being here and for sharing your gifts.
Of course, this was so fun. Thanks so much for having me.